Hello, this is Joshua for Frost Dragon Designs, and today I'd like to talk to you about my Taurus Zodiac Cat hard enamel pin. This pin is part of Series 4 of my larger Black Cat RPG collection. In Series 4, I based the first 12 pins off of the 12 astrological signs of the Western Zodiac. This pin was inspired by Taurus, the bull. So let's get into the design. In my first sketches, I thought that I would depict this as a kitty riding a bull with some sort of a weapon. However, it didn't take me very long to realize that the obvious design was going to be a Minotaur. Looking at this sketch, I think I was probably going to originally draw off of Egyptian themes for his costuming, but I decided I'd go with something more Greek when I actually started working on the design, because the Minotaur myth originated in Greece. Whenever I work on a pin design, I usually have a 1.5-inch square in the background, just so I can keep track of the relative size of the pin that I'm designing. But I knew that this was going to end up being a larger pin, so I changed that square in the background to be a 2-inch square, just to make sure I didn't undersize this character. I also knew that the head was going to be really important for making this look like a convincing Minotaur cat. So I did a lot of research ahead of time, looking at pictures of bulls to kind of get an understanding of the different horn shapes that they might have. Also, the ear placement was something that I needed to take into account, because cats typically have their ears up on the top of their head, whereas bovine seem to have their ears more on the side. So one of the things I did to help this have a more bull-like look to it was I moved those ears down to the side, and that also helped me with bringing the horns down so that they looked more integrated with the skull instead of like they were sitting on top of his head like part of a costume. I also briefly gave the character a nose ring, as in pop culture, bulls are often depicted with nose rings, but after a little bit of research, I learned that the nose ring is really used by breeders and farmers and that sort of thing to control the bull. And I wanted to make sure that this was a ferocious character, and so having something that's sole purpose is to control them seemed really out of place, so I very quickly removed that from the design. After I got the head right, the next concern was making sure that the body conveyed what I wanted it to. I wanted something big and muscular. I'm also not ashamed to admit that I grew up in the 90s, so I watched cartoons like Darkwing Duck, and there was a villain whose name was Taurus Bulba, and he was, as you can guess, a bull. And he had, very broad shoulders, very big rib cage, big chest, little waist. Just like a lot of kind of Minotaur type characters do. The Tauran race in World of Warcraft are built like that. It's just kind of a very stereotypical power fantasy look for this type of character. And so my Minotaur is no different. He's got huge shoulders. He's got a very broad chest, a tapered waist going down into his muscular legs. So, that for me is a very kind of iconic body shape for a Minotaur, and I wanted to make sure that my kitty Minotaur very much fit that bill. It was also kind of a foregone conclusion that my Minotaur would be wielding either an axe or multiple smaller axes. I don't really know where that got started, but most depictions of Minotaurs, they have some sort of an axe. It just seems to be the stereotypical weapon for them. So sometimes you need to lean into those stereotypes just a little bit to make sure that you're meeting expectations. And since Minotaurs are kind of an iconic creature type, going all the way back to Greek myth, it's important that you meet those expectations. I knew that I wanted the outfit to have some sort of Greek inspiration to it, but I really wasn't sure what that meant. I added the cape, and I added kind of the loincloth part, and I had, pants on him. And, there's that brass ring on his chest that's kind of got like the leather straps holding the cape on. And it all worked. It visually looked nice, but I wasn't really sure what was going on with it yet. So rather than just kind of keep pushing forward, I decided I would stop and think about that a little bit and maybe work on the axe, since I knew that was really going to be an important part of the design as well. Now, there wasn't really anything wrong with the way I had originally drawn the axe here. I liked it. It was a nice broad-headed axe, fantasy, not something that would really exist in real life, but I liked it. The problem was it was done very quickly and it wasn't necessarily symmetrical, so I felt the need to go in and redo the axe just to make sure that it was symmetrical, and that it was really in as close to perspective as I can get with these types of designs. Functionally, it looks about the same as the one that I originally did, but, it's probably a bit cleaner. While I was working on the axe, though, I had an interesting idea I wanted to try out for his outfit. I thought maybe he had kind of like Greek philosopher robes. I thought that would be kind of an interesting juxtaposition there. This big, hulking, muscular Minotaur with a menacing axe, and he's wearing, what you would expect to be like Greek robes. I went with something a little different. I didn't do white Greek robes. I went with burgundy with white trim. And it really did end up having the look that I had in mind, but something about it just didn't sit right with me. Maybe for a different project, but for this project, I decided I wanted to go back to something that was a bit more barbarian-like. Once I made that decision, I wasn't really sure that I'd be able to incorporate a Greek inspiration in this design, but I figured I'd just keep it in mind and maybe an opportunity would present itself. So as I kept fiddling with the design, something else that just wasn't sitting right with me when I saw it was how the top of his head was. And I remembered that there are Highland cattle, a type of cow, bovine, anyway, from Scotland. And they have real shaggy hair, and they look like they've got kind of a shaggy haircut. And I thought that might be a fun aesthetic to add into this. So that's why he has the kind of shaggy hair on the top of his head now. And a little later on, I actually incorporate a bit of a shaggy beard with it as well. I continued to just kind of fiddle around with the design a bit. I bulked up the one shoulder armor quite a bit. Fantasy armor doesn't necessarily make sense, although I try to most of the time, but sometimes I just go with what looks cool. And in this case, I really thought that looked cool. Then it was really just a matter of adding some more details and tiny adjustments here and there until we got to the point where I looked at it and I said, you know what, that's what I want. That's really cool. That's what I want out of this design. A few spots still needed some splashes of color just to break up shapes. And I, went through and I made sure that the burgundy really was the color I wanted to use for his cape. But after that, I was done. Or so I thought. I had one last little idea of how I might be able to incorporate the Greek theme. I thought about the Greek key border shapes, and I decided I could give him an armband with a Greek key. I did kind of a quick version to see if I liked it, and I did. So then it was just a matter of making sure that things were lined up properly for it to have a clean, crisp look to it. Now, this detail does scare me a little bit from a production perspective. The enamel cells within that Greek key are very small, but I like the look of it too much to not try. Also, at the very end, just because I thought it would be funny, I removed the axe for a couple seconds there, and I put in the little triangle guitar from the Series 2 Lizard Bard. And I let this Minotaur rock out for just a couple seconds before I gave him back his axe. Thank you very much for your time. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I will be releasing a new video for each design. Have a great day.